This is the new Rackraft prop. It is the 5038 prop, and it is a twin blade prop. You might notice that it looks very familiar to the previous Rackraft prop, which is this one right here. And it looks very interesting. This new one, if I can get to focus, this new one looks very, very interesting. And first I'm going to show you the blade profile, and we'll discuss that first. So if you can see the blade profile here, the new prop is actually a little bit less aggressive than the previous 5051 prop. These, I don't know what these pitches, if these pitches are actually accurate. I think the 5051 is actually a 4-2 pitch. It's not actually a 5-1 pitch. And the 38 might actually be an actual 38. And I think that this prop is designed for very high kV motors. It's a very interesting prop because it is very, very light. I'll weigh it when I get back to the house, and I'll put that weight up on the screen. The material is definitely different as well. You might see how flexible it is versus the previous Rackraft prop, which is much stiffer. If I can get the damn camera to focus. Much, much stiffer than the new prop. The old prop is much stiffer, and I think that is for a particular reason, but either way, it feels very, very durable, and it feels more than stiff enough to do its job in the air. So I'm going to predict that this prop is intended for very, very high kV, and by very high kV I mean 2700, 2800, 3000 kV. So let's fly it and see what it's like. You'll notice that I'm once again using the Legend 2 because I broke the Legend 3 at the Racekraft race this weekend. Unfortunately, I can't get it working again, so I'm stuck with the Legend 2 for now. I couldn't exactly predict what it was going to feel like, and I thought before that it was going to be really good for super high kV, and I was right about that. It is definitely really good for super high kV, but I'm really impressed with generally the prop. So the previous Rackraft prop, this one, the whole concept of this prop was to optimize it for a particular speed. And this prop has been optimized for about 60, 61 miles per hour, I think Zach told me. And it works perfectly at 60 miles per hour. That's where its sweet spot is. So if you're cruising at about 60 miles per hour, you have excellent control, excellent efficiency, and the prop is doing its job really, really well. I think that these props are actually, I don't know what they are designed for, but I think they're designed for actually a higher cruising speed. And that's why the prop is a lower pitch, and it has less aggressive blade. So it still has that very linear power feel. And what I mean by linear power feel is that when we put a traditional prop on a multi-rotor on one of these motors, and the prop starts to spin up at a very low RPM, you start getting a big bulk of thrust. And that's actually not very good, because like when I put the Cyclone blades on this quad, it hovers at like, I don't even know, maybe 9% basically on the Taranis controller. The first white line, just before the first white line, is my takeoff, and that's where it hovers. It's right there. It's like right at the bottom. So like it almost hovers at zero throttle. So with these props, it doesn't really start to take off until about 35%, which is interesting because that's actually better. Because we were just talking about this weekend, did a lot of racing, which I never really do. So this is like the second time that I actually tried racing. And the first time I tried racing, I only ran one heat and that was the end of it. So this time this is really the first time I really tried racing. And we were discussing both tracks on Saturday and Sunday, the Racecraft event as well as this Sunday event, were very tight courses. And we were discussing top speed, size of craft, and 3-inch versus 5-inch, and what we prefer better and why we think it might be better. And basically, majority of us prefer 5-inch because it just feels more correct in the air, whereas 3-inch is just a little bit too zippy. 4-inch is probably the sweet spot for these tight, intricate courses. But what we basically discussed was that we need that immediacy of the punch and the power without the crazy like blow up of like when you give it a little bit too much thrust and it goes flying into the air. So that's kind of what these props do for you. I have to actually try racing these props. They actually are very good. It's very interesting that it's kind of exactly tailored to what I just described. The prop does not have a lot of thrust down low, and that's, you can tell because the scoop is so far in here that it doesn't even start doing anything until it actually gets up to speed. But once you pass about the 30% mark, then it starts doing something, and then you have a lot of throttle resolution down low so that you have that 30% to like 55%, 60%, that you actually have very good throttle modulation. It's very easy to control the throttle. And then the prop is specially designed for very high speed. So the wingtips here are very, very thin and they're very low drag. And when you get up to high speed, the last 20% of throttle, it's like, on these are 25, 22 kV motors. And I'm pretty sure these props will be much better on 2700 kV motors. And that last 20%, it's like you have a turbocharger. Like it just explodes in the air. And you'll probably see that, you probably saw it in the video as well. It goes nuts through the air at that last 20%. And that's kind of what you really want for racing. You don't want to go super duper fast all the time. You just want it when you need it. The rest of the time you need to have really good throttle resolution. And that's really cool. I think I'm going to actually try using these props for actual racing. These might be excellent racing props. I don't know if they're too great for, I mean, they might be okay for acro. I like having the throttle down low. I like the traditional thrust feel for acro. I want to have that really good like punch and power down low. But for racing, man, these props are really interesting. They are really good. And the other thing is that they're really efficient. So this quad on the Cyclone props and on the Racecraft 5051, it pulls about 150 amps. Like that's normal. That's after I'm done flying, my RROSD tells me that I have pulled a maximum of 150 amps. On these props, I couldn't even get it past 100 amps. I couldn't even, it maxed out at 97 amps, which is shock. 50 less amps in a punch, that's a massive improvement in efficiency. So these props are really good for two purposes. They feel like they're going to be really good for racing, really good for racing on high kV motors. And you have a little bit less control feel when you're, I mean, that's just the general gist of this kind of a prop, because it's not made to go slow and it's not made to be at low RPM. So when you're at low RPM, you don't really have excellent control feel. But when you do get to its cruising speed where it wants to be, you have really good control feel, and it's really good for that. So this prop is good for people that are looking for crazy efficiency, because they are crazy efficient props. If you put them on like a 2300 kV motor, you could probably cruise on a 1300 battery for, I don't know, maybe even 7 minutes. They're really that efficient. But for racing, that's where they really shine. Definitely pick up some sets and try them out. They're really interesting. And don't take a first judgment when you like first fly it really quick or do a line of sight test, because it doesn't have a lot of punch down low. But if you do a real good like max throttle punch, it does have a good kick. Really interesting props.